to the 3-Inning Fan Show with me, Kelley Franco. I am so excited about my guest here today because I am here with Rich Lowry, Editor-in-Chief of the National Review. Rich, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, yeah. I welcome any opportunity to talk about anything besides politics, so let's do it.
Well, and thank you for coming to the studio, too. You write about politics, you write about our institutions, our culture, our economics. But we can look at baseball through that lens, can't we?
Yeah, it's a hugely important cultural institution. Not as important as it used to be, right? It's been overtaken by football, both at the professional and college level, but still hugely important, part of the American imagination, part of the American culture, and institutionally important. It was a very bad thing when baseball disgraced itself during the steroid scandal. It played into a sense that all our institutions were failing us. So, yeah, it's important, not just as a game that people enjoy and have a lot of heartache and joy over, but as part of American life, national life.
How has baseball's importance changed culturally from when you and I grew up?
So I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s. That's when it was being overtaken by football. And I think that the basic problem for baseball is that football is the ultimate TV sport. I don't like going to see football games in person, NFL games. It's a little hard to tell what's going on. You can see plays develop a little bit more naturally than you can on TV. Otherwise, they're small, or if you're seated in the wrong place, you can't see part of what's going on, and you end up. The last time I saw a game was a Miami Dolphins game down in Miami against the Jets, and you end up looking at the screen the whole time, right? And you do that a little bit at baseball games, but you kind of just want to watch it on TV, whereas baseball, more people watch it on TV than listen to it on the radio, but I still think is more naturally a radio sport. That I love, getting in a car, driving someplace at night, and putting on a game on the radio. If it's the Yankees, that's my preference because I'm a Yankee fan, but I just love that sound. I love the cadence of it, and I think that's what baseball naturally is. But that's, represents a little bit of a bygone era, but it's still hugely important and has been growing in popularity in recent years, which is a very healthy thing.
Isn't that something, the way it seems to have had a resurgence lately?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of every single rules change they've done, and I would even go further. But I think this is largely about the pitch clock. I just think the pace of the game was an absolute killer. Now, there's a lot of dead time in NFL games as well, but not the way there was in baseball. I remember I was at a Yankee game, 5 years ago or something, with a friend. This time of year, late August, we're baking in the upper deck. They're playing the Blue Jays. Nothing really happened in the game. I think maybe it was 4-2. The Blue Jays were kind of winning the whole time. The Yankees scored a couple runs at the end, but just not a lot happened. And I'm looking at my watch, and it's 3.5 hours. Like, why? It was deadly. And at that time, I'm a major baseball fan. It's my favorite sport. I'm like, I don't know whether I ever want to do this again. It's a waste of time. So I think squeezing out all that dead time was very important. And then I think there are people who, very understandably for the love of the game, and everyone has childhood memories, they consider themselves baseball traditionalists in a way that distorts their understanding of how the game has evolved. Because it was not the case when we were kids that a routine game lasted 3.5 hours.
Right.
It didn't. It maybe lasted 2 hours because the culture was you get the ball and you pitch it. And if you step out and you fiddle with your batting gloves, this was before our time, but Bob Gibson's going to drill you in the ear,
right,
and you're not going to do it again. So the culture sustains a decent pace, but that was lost over time. And then everyone thought, because this is the way baseball had been the last 10, 15, 20 years, this is the way it always had been. And you couldn't mess with it by having a clock. We can't have clocks in baseball. That's just the NFL, NBA, NHL. Can't do it. We just have to put up with these tremendous delays that are killing the game. And so the clock was an innovation, but it was an innovation that brought baseball back more to the way it was being, certainly the pace that it was being played when we were kids. Now, there are other changes, in the game that I don't know, rule changes can't fix, right? I was listening, I think this was during COVID when I was just desperate for baseball, COVID winter and spring. I was listening to every radio broadcast of the Boston Massacre when the Yankees in 1978 won
four-game series,
swept a 4-game series in Fenway, and the second or third game of that series, Guidry pitched, and every leadoff hitter for the Red Sox got on the first 3 innings, and the next batter tried to bunt him over every single time. Now that is crazy.
Yeah.
Right? We now know that that's an idiotic strategy.
Yeah.
So like that's never coming back. But there are downsides to the innovations we have now. Obviously, so many strikeouts, walks, and home runs. But I'm not sure exactly what you can do about that.
Well, that's fascinating to me because some people might think, oh, Rich Lowry, National Review, that you might be kind of a traditional guy, but you like the changes to the game.
I do. My colleagues, I had arguments with them about the pitch clock for a very long time. Most of them now realize I was right about that. I mean, I think everyone thinks it was a great idea. The thing where I'm almost the only baseball fan I know who will admit that I like it, I like the Ghost Runner.
Yeah, I don't like the Ghost Runner. I don't like the Ghost Runner. But you know who does like it? I've had Howie Rose from the Mets booth on the show, Dave Sims from the Yankee booth on the show. The guys who work in baseball like it and they like the pitch clock too, because they didn't like having to stay so late.
Yeah, understandably. George Will, I believe, also likes the Ghost Runner, which might be surprising, and likes the rules changes. But this is why I like the Ghost Runner is it's good. I want the game to end, right? I don't want it to last forever. I wouldn't do the Ghost Runner in the postseason. But when you get the Ghost Runner, actually it adds these elements of the game that traditionalists usually say they miss. Are you going to bunt him over?
Bunt, yeah.
Are you going to hit a ground ball to the other side? And then if you get him over with less than 2 outs, can you get a sacrifice fly? Then you're scoring without actually having a hit. Things happen. Their lead changes. It's exciting. I analogize it to, I'm also a hockey fan, the 3-on-3 overtime is not great. It's a contrivance. But in a regular season, it's fine. It gets the game over. It's kind of exciting. And if it doesn't get the game over, then you have a shootout, which is even more of a contrivance, and you wouldn't do in the postseason. So in the postseason, you just play it out through the regular rules, go to 15 innings or whatever it is, go to 3 periods or 2 periods, whatever it is, in hockey. But I kind of enjoy it in the regular season.
Well, that's great. Now, it seems to me from talking, and also we have a mutual friend who's a misguided Red Sox fan, but I learned from him, too, that you are a Yankee fan. You grew up a Yankee fan.
A huge Yankee fan. I grew up in Virginia, so some people think, oh, I just bandwagoned with the Yankees, which not at all. I was raised as a Yankee fan. My dad was from Manhattan. Huge Yankee fan, so he raised me that way. My dearest possession as a kid was a Yankee hat that he acquired on a trip to New York, and this was just so special to me. I wore it all the time. I can still see the layers in the Grand Canyon of sweat on the bill of this cap. I wore it every summer day and humid days in Virginia. But back then, we live in a golden age of access to sports in terms of being able to view it and know what's going on. So we'd see Yankee games when they're nationally broadcast, which would be on a Saturday afternoon or a Monday night, or when they're playing the Orioles. And not even all the Orioles games broadcast in Washington. So maybe my earliest Yankees memory is trying to get there's a station in Washington that there was a channel that kind of picked up a Baltimore station. And once, I don't know, this might have been in 74, 75, we were getting the rabbit ears of the TV just to try to barely get this fuzzy image from the Yankees playing the Orioles. And back then also, you very often would not get a box score from some games or not even really necessarily know how it turned out because it would be a late score. And the late scores are supposed to show up in the next day's paper, but sometimes they wouldn't.
Especially if you lived in the burbs.
Yeah, so you have no idea. This is why my dad was a loyal subscriber to, this is very antiquated stuff now, the Sporting News, which is a weekly sporting newspaper that religiously had every single box score in it. So he got that as a fail-safe if the newspaper didn't come through.
Wow, those are some great memories. Bringing us back to today, what are you seeing in the Yankees right now?
Well, it's very frustrating. I would rather win or lose a 10-9 game than a 2-1 game. And it feels as though the last month or more, almost every game has been, the norm is a 2-1 game, right? Maybe there'll be something a little bit different. A couple days before we're recording here, we lost 4-1 to the Blue Jays. The night before we were recording, we won 3-1 against the Orioles on a two-run single from Trent Grisham that felt like an offensive explosion.
Right.
And I was looking this up on ChatGPT prior to coming here. This if the current Yankee pace continues in August, the scoring pace, which is basically 3 runs a game, 3.06, it will be the third lowest month of offense in the last 50 years. The only lowest months would be like September 1991, and there's some year in 94. So it is historically bad. Now, the difference between 91 and also their horrible, it's easy to forget because they're such forgettable years, in 13 and 14, like we had Travis Hafner and Lyle Overbay. And,
right.
Only decent hitter in 13 was Robinson Cano. The difference is 3 out of what should be our top 5 batters are injured at the moment, and hopefully you're getting them back.
Yeah, and I have my doubts. I mean, I do feel confident Belly's going to be back soon.
Mm-hmm.
Stanton, I think they're probably just saving him for October. As far as I'm concerned, he has one job, and that's hit in October.
Yeah.
But Judge, I'm a little nervous, personally. This is not based on any actual information. It's speculation. But the way Cashman conducted the trade deadline was not super aggressive, and it made me think that he was a little bit cynical about Judge's return. What are your thoughts on that?
Might be. Excuse me. He's had a tendency to want to get guys at the trade deadline that are more than just 1-year rentals, right? So it may be a little bit more than just looking at being worried about Judge. It might be his practice now. Also, I think you just can't rely on the trade deadline the way you could in the past because so many more teams have a chance. So the market is so much smaller. And they screwed themselves last year by, I like Ryan McMahon. I think he's a gamer. I think he's a cheerful guy. I love seeing him play defense. He's so slick, but he can't hit, right?
No.
He can't hit. And we went into the season with no third baseman, and you just can't be guaranteed that you're going to get a good third baseman. We got an okay third baseman. But so it may be with an eye to Judge. I think it's just the way he thinks about it. But I have the same worry, and this is kind of injury that I've seen doctors say it can happen again. And it affects your torque of your upper torso, which is like obviously a huge source of power. So my worst case scenario, my nightmare would be it's the equivalent of Don Mattingly's back injury that just sapped his power, and he was never the same after that. After that, hopefully I'm wrong. But what's definitely been established this year, and what was the Dodger toe injury year? Was that 23?
Yeah, that was bad. Yeah. I think 23,
he is, without a doubt, the most valuable player in the major leagues in terms just if you take him away, the team is totally different. Actually, offensively, pathetic at times.
It's so true. Now, I read an interesting piece by Joel Sherman of the New York Post the other day, and he raised a fascinating proposition, which was that the Yankees pitching has been so good and the offense has been so anemic. Boone has been leaning on the pitching a lot and probably doesn't want the pitching to be exhausted when October gets here. When late September comes, is there a point, Sherman posited, where Boone has to punt some games, just resign himself to the wild card, just so he can rest his pitching and save him for October?
I would think that makes sense. I think you do it, though, only if basically you have to concede the division. Because the problem is that their postseason performance is so dependent on home field advantage. They haven't lost a series where they had a home field advantage, and they tend to lose the ones where they're away, not all of them. So it's big. I go back, maybe this is my obsessiveness here, but I still cannot stop thinking about, there was a Marlins game after the trade deadline last year when we were up like 10-4 or something. Grisham hit a grand slam. Like, it's in the bag. This is great. And we blew it. Every single pitcher we acquired failed in that.
That was brutal.
Bird, Duvall, and it turned out they just weren't good, especially Bird, and even Bednar. And then that had Caballero, I think, in right, and he let a ball go through his legs, and we lost this game in extra innings, 11-10 or whatever it is. And we tie with the Blue Jays in the East because they'd won the series with us in the regular season. They get the home field advantage. Now, maybe they would have beaten us anyway because they were on fire. But that one game, 4 innings, and this is one of the things that's amazing about baseball. 162 games, right? Drudgery, kind of everything evens out over time. So no one loss or win matters that much. But at the same time, every single game can matter hugely, and that's an example of it.
So true, yeah, and it could have changed the course of the postseason. I mean, they wound up surviving that wild card round, but the wild card round does take a toll anyway because your guys are tired by that point. So we've waxed a little bit poetic about the past, and we talked about the changes, which it seems like we're both largely in favor of. But can I put you in the time machine 10 years from now and ask you what you think baseball looks like?
I don't know. We're definitely, home plate umpires are not going to be making balls and strikes calls. I don't think they should be. I think the challenge has kind of been interesting, and there's the slightly strategic element about it. Which challenges are you going to use? How many challenges is Jazz Chisholm going to waste? Before the fourth inning is over. But the drama of seeing the ball in the red box, but that's all going to go away and should. And I know people are nostalgic about home plate umpires. You can still have him there standing there, and you're still raising his arm or not. But if mythical Abner Doubleday had like a magic machine to get every ball and strike call right, he would have done that rather than having a guy stand back there. Yeah, and we know the catchers are very good at balls and strikes, but the umpires aren't necessarily as good. Although I have to say, it has been illuminating to me in one sense. I thought there are a lot more like flagrantly blown calls. Now they get calls wrong, but most of them are really minute.
Yeah,
really minute. So we won't have that, and I just don't know about the where we're going with the economic model, and I haven't firmly planted my feet on whether I favor a salary cap or not, because you can look at this both ways. It is insane that the Dodgers are paying more, once you add the luxury tax in, paying more on their seventh place hitter, who's not very good. Now, you wouldn't have...
Are you talking about Kyle Tucker?
Yeah, you wouldn't have said he's not very good because he's been a great player over his career. Then 8 teams, the total salaries of 10 teams, that's insane. But then you flip it around the other way, well, the Mets spend a lot. And you talk about institutions. One thing that fascinates me, at the beginning, is the culture of institutions and how enduring they are, even when the personnel and the circumstances change. The Mets are still the Mets, right? They have a billionaire who will spend anything, and they still manage to be the Mets. And you got the Rays leading the East, and the Brewers have a real chance, better than the Dodgers so far in the regular season, and a real chance of winning the World Series. So there's very small market teams. So do we have a competitive balance problem or not? I think we kind of do, even though there are exceptions to it. But the biggest problem in my mind is I think it's unfair for small market teams to have fans to almost have a guaranteed sense they're losing their biggest players, right?
So how do we fix it?
I think maybe you can contrive some sort of system that makes it easier for the small market teams to keep their guys. I don't know what it is exactly. And if you're going to have any sort of cap at the top, you also have to have some guaranteed floor of spending.
Absolutely.
Because there's no reason the Pirates can't be like the Guardians, right? Or the Royals. They're small market teams that succeed. It's hard. You have to be really smart. You have to be really nimble. But the Rays are almost consistently competitive, right? So is that impossible, or can it be replicated by other small market teams? So maybe some sort of cap at the top and then some sort of floor at the bottom. But I just think the players' union almost has a religious opposition to any sort of salary cap. So we're definitely losing games next year. It's just a question of how many.
That's interesting. Okay. I personally think that we're going to get in most games next year. So I'd say at least 150 games. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to get it done, but I think it's going to go down to the wire.
And what do you think it's going to look like?
I think it's just going to be completely hairy, and I think that the salary cap will not be imposed at the end.
So there'll be some measures to aid competitive balance, more revenue sharing, or
they'll have to do a stronger competitive balance tax, or it could wind up in the courts like it did in '94, and that might solve it. I'm not sure how the end looks. I don't know if one side is going to back down, though.
Yeah.
I don't see the union completely backing down from the salary cap because, like you said, I mean, it's in their blood. We won't accept it. But the union has changed a lot from 1994. That was a legendarily strong union. I had Rick Cerrone on the show last week. I was telling you before we sat down, and he was talking about how strong Marvin Miller and Don Fehr and these guys were back in the day. That was an incredible union. I don't know if the union's that way now because it's a little bit different. They have some younger players. They have the influence of the minor leaguers in the union. And I think that the owners are being very shrewd in how they're targeting the union. They're putting in a lot of bells and whistles for the young guys.
Yes.
Huge increase in minimum salary, possible decrease in the number of years to get to free agency for guys who are over 30. So they're really working hard to get those young guys. They know they're never going to get the superstars.
That's very true. They should cater to the rank and file.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I think we're losing games, at least for the owners, April games don't mean much. You know, the attendance tends to be low. A lot of games tend to be canceled. The TV revenue is really weighted towards the end of the season and the postseason. So they have leverage at least at the beginning of the year. But I just think it'll be terrible for the game. You know, any sort of delay or loss of games.
Do you think there's any danger that either side is underestimating the amount of damage that a work stoppage would do?
Possibly, yeah. It'll be brought home to them over time. You know, the later in the season that it gets delayed, I think it comes home to everyone, I think.
Well, it took us years to recover after the 94-95 strike.
Which screwed the Yankees.
Yes,
really
it did.
It.
Well,
and the Expos.
And the Expos, I was going to say, yeah. So one change that might come about, and I think it is going to come about personally, is this idea of realignment. Have you come across that in your reading at all?
I've seen discussion of it, and apparently Manfred, he wants this to be part of his legacy, right? You get the collective bargaining agreement, then you expand, you know, Nashville, maybe Salt Lake City, and then you go to 4 team divisions in each league, and part of the appeal of it, right, is you have 4 team divisions, even more teams will be competitive, right? But I despite my scorn for baseball traditionalists in some respects, I think we need an American National League. It's part of it. And the American League East, maybe I could lose the Rays if I have to vote someone off the island, but we should be in the same division as the Red Sox and the Orioles, certainly.
Are there any distinctions left between the AL and the NL? When we were growing up, we had the AL had the designated hitter, NL didn't. We had separate league presidents. We had informally different strike zones, even though they were the same in the rule book. They were called differently. What distinctions are left between the leagues?
You play within your own league more, right? But that's the main one. And I thought I'm of two minds about the new schedule. So I thought we did play I got sick of playing the Red Sox. You know, we played them 18 or 19 times a year.
19 times.
And in that period where the competition was most intense, the rivalry was most intense, 03, 04, 05, in there, invariably, and no matter what happened, we could get swept the first 2 series by the Red Sox. End of the year, we'd either end up 10-9 or 9-10 versus the Red Sox. So it's like,
no matter what.
Right. So, and there's certain teams I enjoy seeing the Yankees play. I love seeing the play of the Cubs. There's something very classic about that. Same thing with the Cardinals. I kind of like the Padres. I'm interested in the Padres. But then there are a lot of teams I don't care about playing the Marlins or the Diamondbacks. It does feel very, very random. But I do think it's, even though the meaning of the distinction has vitiated, I think it's still worth preserving.
I agree with you. And what will it do to our baseball stories, our memories, our rivalries, if we don't have the AL and the NL anymore?
Yeah, it's worth preserving the rivalries. But I think, baseball memories are so caught up with childhood, right? So a kid growing up today, is the ABS challenge is part of the game, right? Is this the first year? Did we have it last year? This is the first year, right?
Yeah, our first year.
But an 8-year-old kid, this is what they experience, and they'll be looking back, when they're in their 50s. Wow, when I was a kid, we had the ABS challenge. What happened to that? So this is the other thing. Like sports, change is built into it, and the fundamental of baseball. What I said about the umpire, will no longer have the home plate umpire. When I say that, there are a lot of baseball traditionalists that, well, you're taking out the human element of the game. You're taking out an element of human error that is supposed to be extraneous to the game. The human element is a guy, 60 feet, 6 inches away, throwing 100 miles per hour. You know, if there was someone within 10 feet of us throwing 100 miles per hour, it would scare us, right? The ball sizzles, right? And then it breaks, and it might break in multiple directions. And then it might look like it's going to be 100, and it's only 85. And how do you hit that, right? That's the human element. The human element is seeing a second baseman who makes every single play, every single game, have a ball go through his leg, like a little leaguer, right? At a random moment. Or, you know, bad memories for us. Game 5 of the World Series against Aaron Judge drops a line drive that 99.9% of the time he's going to catch, right? That's the human element. And that's what's never going to change. So the economics, the salary cap, all that is negotiable. But what happens between those lines has been the same, you know, for more than 100 years. I think it has a kind of perfection to it. The base is exactly the right distance apart, just hard enough to hit the ball, but possible. And I just love. I think a baseball diamond is the most beautiful thing in sports. You can just put me next to a well-groomed baseball diamond, and I'm happy. I like looking at it. You know, I go to games as early as I can. When I go to games, I watch the foul lines be put down. And if you go and you just pay attention, you always notice something new. People say that about the game. You always see something different. It's also just about the total experience. So all that's wonderful. All that's the essence of it. All that's never going to go away. At least let's hope and pray.
You mentioned the speed at which pitchers throw. In 10 years, you think that's still a thing, or you think the pendulum swings back?
Faster. I just think if you look across through every sport, it's just the conditioning is better, the technique is better, and everyone gets faster and stronger and more agile. So, you know, we're marveling at Mazeroski. Is that how you say his name? 104. There'll be someone throwing, 108. 10 years from now or whatever it is. And by the way, just, problem, you brought up the Yankee pitching and whether they'll rest it. I was reading an article on how much they've used the bullpen because there were all these 2-1 games and, you really have to rely on your bullpen arms in games like that. They now track, like, when pitchers just toss between games or in warm-ups, they have iPhones all around tracking every single throw, like the distance and the speed. And now they just don't throw so much between games. You only have should only throw whatever it is 200 pitches a week, including your warm-ups. Well, go down in your warm-ups to have more gas in the tank for a real game. So all that just makes the athletes better, and that will just increase in my mind.
It's fascinating because you just wonder like how much the human arm can sustain in terms of mileage.
Yeah. Probably more, but I mean, we have seen a lot more arm injuries, but then also they're more survivable, right?
Right. Thanks to Tommy John. God rest his soul.
Absolutely.
So as we move forward and we think about what baseball looks like in 10 years, right now we have this profound use of analytics, and you referenced it with the iPhones, tracking every single pitch. Do we delve as we go forward further into analytics, or does the pendulum swing back to the old school eye test way?
No, more analytics. Just like more speed, agility, more analytics. AI will be integrated in a huge way into baseball, and the analytics it can't go too far. I mean, one thing that I thought was kind of ruining the aesthetics of it. It didn't really affect who was getting a hit that much. But was the shift. It looked horrible. I was so sick of having you still kind of have it because they shade so close to second base, but just a hard ground ball up the middle, and in your whole life you're primed to think base hit, it's right to the guy. So I like that they eliminated the shift, but we'll see even more of that. But it's eliminated things that turned out, once you think about them a little bit, to be superstitions. One I mentioned the sacrifice bunts, during the Boston Massacre. Another was having your best hitter hit fourth. Right, or one of your best hitters hitting fourth. Because the most elemental way, why would you take your best hitter and have a pretty good chance that he's not going to hit in the first inning, or a real chance he's not going to hit in the first inning? Why? Right? Where did Arise get traded to?
He went to the Phillies.
The Phillies. So they're hitting him cleanup because you get Schwarber, your big power guy, hitting leadoff to get him as many at-bats as possible. And then if you get a couple guys on, what need to happen? You need a base hit, right? If you get a base hit leading off, you're on first, and then a lot of other stuff needs to happen. Whereas if there are other guys on, you can just get a base hit or make contact, and you could score a run. So it actually makes more sense to have your leadoff hitter hitting fourth. So I think analytics have been very, very revelatory in that way. And then also, I think a lot about the 2004 championship series against the Red Sox. And there are a number of things that could have gone differently there. But one of them was in Game 7 when Kevin Brown had flamed out and was bases loaded. And we brought in the guy whose name escapes me, who was a gopher ball artist from the Expos, had a terrible year, gave up on her 20 home runs during the year.
I think at this point I was crying in my beer, but anyway, so go ahead.
It wasn't lost yet. That's the point. It wasn't lost yet. But today, Joe Torre realizes that's the game situation. It's the top of the fourth or whatever, but this is the game situation. Either bring in Mariano, say go as long as you can, or there's another very good relief pitcher we had that year. You bring him in and you get the out and you stabilize it rather than giving up the grand slam to Johnny Damon and the whole thing washes away. Now, again, analytics tells you don't do it the old way. The eye test was wrong. The formulaic way was wrong. So I expect we'll have even more of that.
You're a big fan of analytics.
Yeah. The shift I didn't like, but there's no way to stop these things, right? Because the teams that do them first, if they're helpful and they work, they're going to make you better. So everyone else has to do it as well.
These teams that play small ball, like the Brewers, and actually the Rays are actually hitting some home runs now. They got Caminero and some good sluggers. But can the small ball team succeed in the postseason, or do you need those heavy hitters because you just can't string together a certain number of hits against the powerful pitching you face in the postseason?
I think it's the latter, clearly. So again, talking about a rise, you get a single or a walk, other things got to happen. You hit a home run, nothing else needs to happen, right? And the Dodgers won the World Series because they hit home runs, right? Now they have all sorts of other strengths as a team, but they hit home runs, and that's how they came back in that Game 7. So all things considered, you want to hit home runs. What's so frustrating about the Yankees, they tend to have a very home run dependent offense, and then you don't hit the home runs in the postseason, then like nothing's happening. But just making contact's not a substitute for hitting home runs. Even though I know that the Blue Jays beat us making a lot of contact, but there was a lot of hard hit balls. And also any 5-game series is a pretty small sample size. So all things considered, I'd rather have the home runs, and lots of pitching, right? So this is the strength the Dodgers have, is the margin of competition in baseball is so small, right? So it doesn't shock you any given game if the worst team beats the best team, right? You expect them to do that at least 40% of the time, right? But in the postseason, so that doesn't mean the Dodgers are going to they spend the most, they're going to be the best regular season team, and they're not this year. But in the postseason, they're just so built for that because they have 6 top-end starters, right? And they may not be healthy all the time, as we see in the regular season. But when you do that, you only need 3 to actually start games. Then you have a totally stacked bullpen, right? So that's what's, besides hitting home runs, that's really worked for them the last couple of years, and having better fundamentals. So frustrating, again, to bring up bad memories about the Yankees playing the Dodgers.
Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, there are stories after our meltdown in the 5th inning of Game 5 about how Mookie Betts would get a ball, would have balls hit off the wall and turn and make the throw to second during practice before games, and have to do it perfectly like 10 times in a row. It's like Caitlin Clark practicing threes, and then if you mess one up, you do it again, and that sort of just rote devotion to details matters a lot in close games, because a close game in baseball is so close, right? But a lot of people think, oh, you're a good team, you're going to win all your one-run games. No, even good teams, they win half and they lose half because the margin is so small in a one-run game. So as we learned to our heartbreak, one error and one key moment can change everything in a close game.
I thought you were going to bring up Freddie Freeman's walk-off grand slam in Game 1, and that was just such it could have been a series-changing moment. And
should have brought in Tim Hill. Maybe it would have been the same thing.
I know.
Have brought in Nestor. Why
Not
did you bring
Nestor.
in Nestor?
Yeah.
I love Nestor, but shouldn't have brought him in.
And I was just sitting so pretty that night. I was all alone. My husband was traveling, and I was just sitting on the couch, just all happy, 100% happy. And in that moment, it just went away.
Yeah, but isn't a Yankees-Dodgers World Series just great? And this is, going back to the competitive balance and how I'm of two minds about it, dynasties are good for the sport. It wasn't like the sport was suffering when the Yankees were dominant in the 1950s. It was the height of baseball, right? And the thing about a dynasty is a dynasty ends. And if you hate the team that's the dynastist, it's wonderful, right? And the Dodgers will fall, and it's going to be a great thing, right? But having great teams, I think, is good for sports. Now, you have teams, leagues, obviously, that have salary caps that have dynasties and great teams. You know, the Chiefs would be a recent example because you get a generational talent, and that sets you for several years. But dynasties are good.
Right. Is a Guardians-Marlins World Series what MLB needs to showcase the sport?
No, I have to occasionally look back to remind myself who won the Diamondbacks-Rangers World Series. I didn't care, right? Who cared?
Right.
And also just the aesthetics. The Yankees clearly have the best uniform in baseball, but the Dodgers are right up there. And so it's just a very classic matchup. Maybe I'm talking myself into we should have another one this year.
Do you think the Yankees are built for this?
Yeah, I think they have a good shot. The American League is really weak, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Orioles have been in and out of the playoffs on any given day, being a couple games under 500 in the American League. And the pitching has been spectacular. The bullpen's been, I thought the weakness of the team was going to be the bullpen. The bullpen's been great. And it sort of justifies what they seem to think, which they can collect, any 7 guys back there. And Brent Hedrick,
yeah, he's great.
Brent, they got him off waivers a couple years ago, and he's been a mainstay of the bullpen. So if you match the pitching up with just an adequate offense, they should be in pretty good shape. But circling back to what we were talking about with the injuries, it just depends on are these guys back and how effective they are. Most importantly, obviously, Judge.
Yeah, I do think Cashman usually does a pretty good job in the bullpen, and usually at the trade deadline, too, which is why I was kind of surprised he didn't get anyone this year. But
yeah,
I guess we'll go with what we have.
Yeah, well, no alternative now. But in theory, we would be able to, with healthy starters, do what the Dodgers do, right? Weathers goes in the bullpen. Maybe Will Warren goes in the bullpen, if Fried is back and Rodon stays healthy. So you can squint the right way and say the Yankees could be quite strong in the postseason. But it hasn't been, the last 2 months have been pretty hard to take.
Indeed. So we've got owners, we have players, we have realignment, we have expansion. What does Rich Lowry want to get out of baseball?
Enjoyment, right? And this is the other thing, going back to the rules. These games are for the fans, right? So the NFL, which I think has just done such a brilliant job, they are fooling around with the rules constantly. I was doing a podcast on sports rules with a colleague, I know, a year ago, and I looked up NFL rule changes, and there could be a whole book. There could be an encyclopedia this thick, about NFL rule change. The hash marks are changing. They're fooling around with last year with the kickoff rule, and it's all towards making the sport more entertaining and, in the NFL, safer, which isn't such an issue in baseball. But it's there to be enjoyed, and it's heartbreak, and it's joy, and it's frustration, and satisfaction. And it's entertainment. It's something to do. And I don't sit down and watch many Yankee games all the way through because I'm too busy. But I'm always aware of what's happening. On my ESPN app, I know who's 0 for 2. I know how they scored the runs in any given game. Even if I'm not watching it, I listen to a lot in the car. Dave Sims and Susie Waldman. If you had Susie Waldman on,
I'd love to have Susan on the show. I haven't met her yet.
Connection, but you should have her, or on my app, on the phone. And as soon as it ends in October, there's an emptiness there, and can't wait for it to come back. And I'm gonna have to wait longer, probably next year, as we were discussing.
Yeah, there's certainly a period of mourning, but we're gonna have to hope for the best for next year. Now, Rich, we close every show here at the 3 Inning Fan with a very important question.
Yes, what is it?
It has to do with the other love in my life besides baseball, which is food. And we like to talk about what we like to eat while we're watching the ball game. Now, this can be while you're at the ballpark. Maybe you have a favorite vendor, or maybe you like watching the games home on your couch. But what we like to eat while we're watching the game. So, Rich Lowry, what is good to eat while watching the ball game?
I'm not going to be very exciting here. I usually don't eat when I'm at home because, again, I'm not sitting and watching a game in its entirety. I'm at the ballpark, very standard nachos with extra cheese. They got to be slathered with cheese.
That weird liquid cheese.
I love that liquid cheese. Yeah. When I was a kid, like when 7-Eleven was bigger, it was such a huge event that a 7-Eleven opened in walking distance of our neighborhood.
Oh yeah, no,
And
that's a big deal.
The Big Gulp. They were the first that did the massive colas, and 2, they had nachos, and it was such a big deal for us as kids, on a weekend night to walk at 11 o'clock to the 7-Eleven and get nachos with jalapenos, and that's my go-to at a ballpark. I want the weird liquid cheese slathered all over it with a lot of jalapenos.
What percentage of that weird liquid do you think is actually cheese?
I don't like to think about it.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about it. And the problem with I wear khakis a lot. As I gotten older, I don't think I look appropriate in jeans. But they pick up stains very well.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the problem I have if it's nachos. Inevitably, the liquid cheese is getting somewhere on my pants. And the same thing is true of a sausage. I prefer a sausage to a hot dog. Italian sausage, and I like lots of mustard and onions on that, and that also inevitably gets on my pants. So.
Sounds like you should save up for some.
Upsets my wife.
Yeah, you need some spare khakis.
There you go.
Rich, you have been a fantastic guest
Thank you.
today.
Thanks for having me. I
Thank
really
you
enjoyed it.
so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Take care.
And everyone, we'll see you soon on the 3 Inning Fan Show. Bye-bye.